He grew up in a place most people only see when they're passing through, never stopping long enough to remember it. Cracked roads, faded buildings, a small government hospital that smelled like antiseptic, sweat, and quiet prayers. This was the kind of place where dreams didn't really get discussed, because survival already took up all the space in the room. His name was Ariv. He wasn't born special. No rich parents. No doctors in the family. No shortcuts. Just a skinny kid with big eyes and a brain that never shut up. Every morning before school, he'd walk past that hospital. Same routine. Same rusted gate. Same ambulance parked crooked like it gave up halfway through life. And every morning he slowed down. Not because he had time to waste, but because something pulled at him. He'd see doctors rushing in and out. White coats moving fast. Faces serious. Focused. Like they mattered. Like what they did actually changed something. And in his head, every single day, the same thought showed up. Man, I want to be that. Not rich. Not famous. A doctor. Someone who could walk into chaos and make it quieter. Someone people looked at when things went bad and said, "Thank God you're here." But he never said that dream out loud. Not really. Because where he came from, saying stuff like that out loud was an easy way to get laughed at. At home, life was loud in a different way. His dad worked long hours doing whatever job paid that week. Construction, loading trucks, fixing things that were already broken. His mom stitched clothes for neighbors, fingers rough, eyes tired, but still somehow gentle. Money was always tight. Not, "Oh, we can't afford vacation" tight. More like, "Let's skip dinner tonight and pretend we're not hungry" tight. Still, his parents loved him. In their own exhausted way. They just didn't understand dreams. Especially big ones. One night, while eating watery lentils, Ariv finally said it. "I want to be a doctor." The room went quiet. Not dramatic quiet. Awkward quiet. His dad didn't look up at first. Just kept eating. Finally, he sighed and said, "Doctor? You know how much that costs." His mom tried to soften it. "It's good to dream, Beta. But be realistic." Realistic. That word hit harder than yelling. At school, it was worse. Ariv wasn't the loud kid. Wasn't the funny one. Wasn't the popular one. He was the kid teachers forgot to call on. The kid who raised his hand and then slowly put it down when no one noticed. One day, during career counseling, the teacher went around asking students what they wanted to be. Engineer. Businessman. Police officer. Then she reached Ariv. "And you?" He swallowed, heart pounding like he was about to do something illegal. "A doctor," he said. The class laughed. Not full-on comedy laughter. Worse, that half laugh. The kind that says, "Bro, come on." The teacher smiled, but it wasn't kind. It was polite pity. "That's very ambitious," she said. "But maybe you should think about something more achievable." Achievable. That word followed him for years. From that day on, people stopped seeing him as a kid with potential. They saw him as a joke with a fantasy. Friends would say stuff like, "When you become a doctor, don't forget me," laughing before he could answer. Relatives would say, "Doctors are born in rich families, not here." Even neighbors got in on it. "Aim lower," they'd say. "Life's easier that way." But here's the thing nobody noticed. Ariv never stopped watching that hospital. After school, instead of playing cricket, he'd sit on the hospital steps and read old textbooks he borrowed from a local shop. Half the pages were missing. The words were hard, but he read anyway. He didn't fully understand anatomy or medicine yet, but he understood one thing very clearly. People were hurting, and someone needed to help. Sometimes he'd see patients crying. Sometimes families arguing. Sometimes doctors walking out looking completely drained, like life had punched them in the face. And instead of scaring him off, it pulled him closer. One evening, an old man collapsed near the gate. People panicked. Someone shouted for help. A junior doctor ran out, checked his pulse, started CPR. Ariv watched every move like his life depended on it. The man survived. That night, Ariv couldn't sleep. He stared at the ceiling, heart racing, mind replaying everything. "This is it," he whispered to himself. This is what I'm meant to do. But reality didn't care about destiny. Reality came with exams, competition, fees, rankings, entrance tests that crushed thousands of dreams every year. And Arav, he wasn't a topper. He was smart, yeah, but not genius level. Not the kind teachers bragged about. He studied whenever he could. Early mornings, late nights, under streetlights when the power went out, with a candle when there was no light at all. Sometimes his eyes burned so bad he thought they'd bleed. Still, doubt crept in. What if they're right? What if this is too big for me? What if I'm just embarrassing myself? On bad days, those thoughts won. On good days, he remembered the old man at the gate. Then came the day that changed everything. The medical entrance exam results were announced. Students crowded around the notice board, shouting, cheering, crying. Arav pushed his way through, heart in his throat. He scanned the list once. Didn't see his name. Twice. Still nothing. 3 times. Nothing. His legs went weak. Someone behind him said, "Told you. Only toppers make it." He walked home slow, like each step was heavier than the last. At home, his dad already knew. News traveled fast. His dad didn't yell. That somehow hurt more. He just said, "Maybe it's time to let this go." That night, Arav locked himself in the bathroom and cried silently so no one would hear. Not because he failed, but because for the first time, he thought maybe the world was right. Maybe this dream really wasn't for someone like him. But then something weird happened. While washing his face, he looked at himself in the mirror. Red eyes, tired face, broken smile. And he got angry. Not loud angry, cold angry. The kind of anger that doesn't scream, it decides. He leaned closer to the mirror and said quietly, "Watch me." That was the moment the boy who only dreamed turned into someone who was willing to bleed for it. He didn't tell anyone his plan. He picked up a cleaning job at the same hospital he used to watch from outside. Mopping floors, taking out trash, working nights. Doctors walked past him without noticing. Patients stepped around him like he was invisible. But Arav didn't mind, because now he wasn't just watching the hospital. He was inside it. And this was only the beginning. Rejection doesn't always come as a loud no. Sometimes it comes as silence. Sometimes it comes wrapped in fake smiles and polite advice. And sometimes it comes from the people you expected to believe in you the most. Arav felt it everywhere. At home, his failure hung in the air like smoke. Nobody talked about the entrance exam anymore, but nobody needed to. It was there in the way his dad avoided eye contact, in the way his mom gently suggested, "Maybe you should think about another path." Another path. That phrase sounded harmless. Logical, even. But to Arav, it felt like someone slowly closing a door he hadn't even gotten the chance to fully open. Relatives started calling. Not to encourage him. Not to ask how he was holding up. But to give advice. Why waste years trying again? You're smart, but not that smart. Doctors need connections, money, luck. Be practical. Every call ended the same way, with Arav saying, "Yeah," and "okay," while staring at the wall, feeling smaller with each word. Outside, his friends moved on. One got into engineering, another into business school. They talked about hostels, new cities, freedom. Arav nodded along, smiled, joked when expected. But inside, he felt left behind, like the world had hit fast forward, and he was stuck buffering. He still went to the hospital every day for work. Same corridors, same smells, same rush of stretchers and shouts and footsteps. But now something had changed. Before, the hospital felt like hope. Now it felt like a reminder of everything he wasn't. One afternoon, while cleaning near the emergency ward, he overheard 2 junior doctors talking. "Another entrance exam season coming up," one said. "Yeah," the other laughed. "Thousands will try. Only a few deserve it." Deserve it. That word hit him right in the chest. He wanted to ask, who decides that? He wanted to say, what about people who don't quit? But he kept his head down and kept mopping. That night, Arav stayed late. He sat on the hospital steps, same place he used to sit as a kid. Only now, Instead of dreaming freely, his mind was heavy with doubt. What if they're right, he thought. What if I'm just chasing something that's not meant for me? For the first time, the dream didn't feel powerful. It felt stupid. The next day, rejection showed up again, this time officially. He went to meet a private coaching institute, one of the best in the city. He waited in line for over an hour, sweating through his cheap shirt. Finally, he sat across from the counselor. The guy barely looked at his file. Previous attempt? Yes. Score? Arav told him. The counselor leaned back, crossed his arms, and sighed. Look, he said, I'll be honest. Students like you rarely make it. Rarely. Not impossible. Just unlikely enough to not be worth the effort. We focus on toppers, the man continued. That's how we maintain results. Results. Arav nodded slowly. How much is the fee? He asked anyway. The number felt unreal. Like a typo. That's for 1 year, the counselor added casually. Arav stood up without another word and walked out. Outside, the city moved like nothing had happened. Cars honking, people laughing, life going on. Meanwhile, Arav stood there feeling rejected by a future he hadn't even reached yet. That night, he didn't study. He just lay on the floor, staring at the ceiling fan spinning lazily. What am I doing? He whispered. Why am I fighting so hard when nobody believes I belong here? The next morning, he overheard his parents talking quietly in the kitchen. He's wasting time, his dad said. I just don't want him to suffer, his mom replied. Suffer. That word hurt more than failure, because now his dream wasn't just unrealistic, it was hurting the people he loved. Later that day, Arav visited his old school. He needed transcripts for another exam attempt. The same school where he once said, I want to be a doctor, and got laughed at. The same teacher recognized him. Oh, she said, surprised. You're still trying? Still trying. Not good luck. Not I hope you make it. Just surprised that he hadn't quit yet. She handed him the papers and added, have a backup plan. That was the world's favorite advice. Have a backup plan. Aim lower. Be realistic. By the time Arav walked out of the school, his hands were shaking. Not from fear, from anger. He sat on a bench outside, staring at the ground. His mind replayed every rejection like a broken playlist. Family, friends, teachers, institutes, society, all saying the same thing in different voices. You don't belong here. For a moment, he almost believed it. Almost. Then he remembered something small. Something stupid, maybe. The old man who collapsed near the hospital gate years ago. How everyone panicked. How one doctor stepped forward. How that moment changed everything. Nobody had asked that doctor about his exam rank. Nobody asked how many times he failed. All that mattered was that he showed up. Arav stood up. His legs felt heavy, but his spine straightened. If nobody believes in me, he thought, then I'll believe in me harder. He went back to the hospital that night and asked for extra shifts. More hours. Less sleep. He bought secondhand books from street vendors. Watched free lectures online when the internet worked. Studied on the floor. On the bus. In the hospital stairwell. Rejection didn't stop coming. People still doubted him. Money was still tight. Results still didn't improve overnight. But something inside Arav had changed. He wasn't studying to prove people wrong anymore. He was studying because quitting would hurt more than failing. And deep down, buried under all the rejection, one quiet voice kept repeating, not yet, but one day. And that day was closer than anyone realized. Sacrifice sounds noble when people talk about it later. In real life, it's ugly. It's lonely. It doesn't come with background music or applause. For Arav, sacrifice started with sleep. Or more accurately, the lack of it. His days blurred into nights, and his nights barely existed at all. He worked the graveyard shift at the hospital because it paid a little more and because nobody asked questions at night. No small talk. No fake smiles. Just work. Mopping floors at 2 a.m. hits different. The hospital felt like a whole other world after midnight. The lights were dimmer. The hallways echoed. Machines beeped steadily like they were counting time he didn't have. Blood stains on the ER floor. Spilled saline. Used gloves tossed in bins like trash. Arv cleaned it all. Quietly. Carefully. Like the place mattered to him. Because it did. Every swipe of the mop felt like a reminder. This is where I belong, just not like this. Not yet. When his shift ended around dawn, most people went home to sleep. Arv went somewhere else. There was a broken staircase near the back of the hospital that nobody used. One flickering bulb. Cold steps. That was his classroom. He'd sit there with his books spread out, knees pulled to his chest, eyes burning as he read page after page. Sometimes he didn't even realize he was crying until the words blurred. Not from sadness, from exhaustion. He learned to study with noise, with patients groaning nearby, with nurses shouting codes, with stretchers rolling past. Silence was a luxury he couldn't afford. At home, it wasn't much better. Power cuts were normal. Candles were common. He studied under whatever light he could find. Sometimes it was a candle. Sometimes it was a cheap battery lamp that died halfway through a chapter. When the light went out, he didn't stop. He memorized. He'd close his eyes and repeat concepts in his head. Bones, muscles, systems, anything that stuck. His parents noticed the change. His mom would wake up early and see him still sitting there, books open, eyes bloodshot. "You didn't sleep?" she'd ask softly. "I'll sleep later," he'd say. Later became never. Food turned into fuel instead of comfort. He ate fast. Cheap. Whatever was there. Hunger stopped bothering him after a while. His body adjusted. Or maybe it just gave up complaining. His friends stopped calling. Not because they hated him, but because his life didn't match theirs anymore. They talked about fun stuff. Parties. New clothes. Freedom. Arv talked about enzymes and anatomy. Eventually, they stopped inviting him. And honestly, that was fine. Loneliness hurt less than distraction. One night, while cleaning an ICU corridor, he saw something that burned itself into his memory. A young woman was crying outside a room. A doctor came out, removed his mask, and gently shook his head. That was it. No long speech. No drama. The woman collapsed to the floor. Arv froze. He didn't know her. He didn't know the patient. But the weight of that moment crushed him. That doctor walked away slowly, shoulders slumped, like he was carrying the pain too. Arv stood there gripping his mop, heart pounding. This job is brutal, he thought. And I still want it. That scared him, because it meant this wasn't just a phase. It wasn't ego. It wasn't stubbornness. It was purpose. His body started paying the price. Dark circles settled under his eyes. His hands shook sometimes when he was too tired. He caught colds easily. Once, he fainted in the hospital bathroom from dehydration. He locked the door, sat on the floor, waited until the room stopped spinning, then went back to work like nothing happened. No one noticed. That's the thing about sacrifice. When you're doing it right, no one notices. Exams came and went. Mock tests. Practice papers. His scores improved, but slowly. Painfully slowly. Not enough to impress anyone. Enough to keep him going. There were nights he wanted to quit. Nights he stared at the ceiling thinking, is this even worth it? And every time that thought came, another followed right after. If I quit now, all this pain meant nothing. So he kept going. Studying while others slept. Working while others rested. Bleeding time while others wasted it. He wasn't becoming a doctor yet, but he was becoming something else. Unbreakable. And he had no idea that this sacrifice, this quiet, invisible grind, was setting him up for a moment that would test everything he'd built so far. A moment where quitting would no longer be an option. Arv walked into the exam hall already exhausted. Not the normal nervous exhausted. This was deeper. Bone-level tired. The kind that comes from months of grinding with no guarantee of payoff. Still, when he sat down and placed his admit card on the desk, something inside him straightened up. This is it, he told himself. This is what all those nights were for. The room was packed. Hundreds of students. Clean clothes. Fresh faces. Parents waiting outside with hope written all over them. Arv looked around and felt out of place immediately. Most of these kids had coaching, tutors, quiet rooms, support. He had a mop job, dark circles, and caffeine holding his brain together. The paper started. At first, things felt okay. Biology questions he'd seen before. Chemistry formulas he'd memorized under candlelight. His pen moved fast. Then physics showed up, and everything went downhill. Questions twisted in ways he hadn't practiced enough. Options looked right and wrong at the same time. His brain froze. Panic crept in quietly. He wiped sweat off his forehead and forced himself to breathe. You didn't come this far to choke, he thought. He guessed where he had to. Fought through the rest. When time was up, he walked out drained but hopeful. For a few days, hope survived. He replayed questions in his head, checked answers online whenever he could. His score seemed close. Not amazing, but close. Results day came fast. Too fast. The notice board outside the exam center was crowded. Students pushed forward, yelling ranks, cheering, crying. Arav stood on his toes, scanning the list. Once, twice, 3 times. His name wasn't there. He checked again slower, letter by letter, like maybe the list had missed him. Nothing. His stomach dropped. A guy next to him laughed and said, "Damn, cutoff's crazy this year." Another replied, "Yeah, if you're not from a top batch, forget it." Arav stepped back, the noise fading into a dull hum. He didn't cry. Not there. He walked away quietly, like nothing happened. But the humiliation was just getting started. Word spread fast. Neighbors found out before he even got home. "So," someone asked, "Dr. Bangay?" They laughed before he could answer. At home, relatives started dropping by. Not to comfort him, to observe, like his failure was some kind of public event. "Second attempt, right?" one uncle said. "Still didn't make it?" another added. "You should stop wasting time," someone else chimed in. "People your age are already settled." Settled. Arav nodded through it all, jaw clenched so tight it hurt. That night, his friends messaged in the group chat. Some sent polite, "It's okay bro" texts. Others sent jokes. "Next year for sure," Dr. Arav faced with tears of joy. The laughing emoji felt like a slap. He left the group without saying anything. The next day at the hospital, it got worse. A nurse he barely knew smiled and said, "Heard about the exam. Don't worry, not everyone can be a doctor." Not everyone. A junior doctor overheard and added, "Yeah, you need a special brain for this." They didn't mean to be cruel. That almost made it worse. During his shift, Arav dropped his mop. His hands were shaking. He bent down to pick it up and felt his face burn. Not from anger, from shame. He avoided mirrors that day, because every reflection felt like it was asking the same question. Who do you think you are? That night, the weight finally crushed him. He sat alone on the hospital steps, head in his hands, breathing hard. His chest felt tight, like something heavy was sitting on it. Months of sacrifice. For nothing. He thought about quitting. Really quitting. Not maybe take a break, quitting. Full stop. No more exams. No more studying. No more embarrassment. Just work. Survive. Be normal. The idea felt peaceful. And that scared him. Because giving up shouldn't feel peaceful. It should feel wrong. Arav stayed there until the sky started to lighten. When he finally stood up, his legs were stiff, his eyes hollow. He went home, lay down, and slept for almost a full day. When he woke up, reality hit again. He had failed. Not just an exam. He had failed publicly. Everyone knew. Everyone judged. Everyone moved on. Except him. A few days later, he went back to his old school to return some books. As he walked past a classroom, he heard students laughing. The teacher was explaining career paths. "Only a few make it into medicine," she said. "The rest should be smart enough to choose something else." Arav stood outside the door, frozen. That sentence wrapped around his failure perfectly. He walked away before anyone noticed him. That night, he sat on his bed holding his admit card. The piece of paper felt heavier than it should have. He folded it slowly. Once. Twice. Then he stopped. Instead of throwing it away, he placed it carefully inside his notebook. Because deep down, beneath the humiliation, beneath the laughter, beneath the shame, something stubborn refused to die. He didn't know how long it would take. He didn't know how much more it would hurt. But one thing was clear. This humiliation wasn't the end. It was the test, and he wasn't done yet. Quitting sounds loud when people talk about it, but when Arav actually stood on the edge of it, quitting was quiet, calm, almost comforting, like a soft voice saying, "It's okay, you tried." That scared the hell out of him, because if quitting felt that easy, it meant the dream was already slipping away. For 3 days after the results, Arav did nothing. No studying, no hospital shifts, no pretending everything was fine. He just existed. He watched the ceiling fan spin, counted the cracks on the wall, let time pass without him. And in that stillness, the noise came. Every laugh, every comment, every look of pity replayed on loop in his head. Not everyone can be a doctor. Be realistic. People like you don't make it. By the 4th day, something snapped. Not in a dramatic way. No yelling. No tears. Just clarity. Arav sat up on his bed, grabbed a pen, and opened a blank notebook. He didn't write motivational quotes. Didn't plan some fake comeback speech. He wrote one sentence. Why did I fail? Not excuses. Reasons. And for the first time, he was brutally honest with himself. He failed because he was tired. He failed because he studied alone with no guidance. He failed because he guessed too much. He failed because he didn't have a system. None of that meant he was stupid. It meant he was underprepared. That realization changed everything. Failure stopped feeling personal. It became technical, fixable. That same day, Arav went back to the hospital and asked for more hours. Double shifts, night shifts, weekend shifts, anything that paid extra. The supervisor looked at him like he was crazy. "You sure?" she asked. "You already work enough." Arav nodded. "I need the money." He didn't explain why. Money became a tool now, not just survival. Every extra hour mopping floors turned into a chapter in a book. A test series fee. Internet data for lectures. He stopped buying anything that wasn't necessary. No snacks. No new clothes. No hanging out. If it didn't move him closer to medicine, it didn't matter. His parents noticed again. "You don't have to do this," his mom said one night. "You can still choose another path." Arav looked at her, tired but calm. "If I quit now," he said quietly, "I'll regret it forever." That was the first time he said it out loud. Not "I want to be a doctor," but "I won't survive quitting." His dad didn't argue after that. He didn't fully understand, but he saw something different in his son's eyes. Not hope. Resolve. Arav changed how he studied. No more random reading. No more hoping things would stick. He built a routine so strict it scared him. Work. Study. Sleep. Repeat. 3 hours of sleep some days. For if he was lucky, he woke up at the same time every day. Studied the same subjects in rotation. Took mock tests weekly and reviewed every mistake like it personally offended him. Wrong answers pissed him off. Not in a self-hating way. In a "I won't let this beat me twice" way. He started asking questions. Not loudly. Not arrogantly. But whenever he heard doctors discuss cases, he listened closely. Later, he'd look things up. Connect dots. Build understanding instead of memorizing blindly. Once, a junior doctor noticed him reading a medical book during a break. "You studying for something?" the doctor asked. Arav hesitated, then nodded. Entrance exam. The doctor raised an eyebrow. Again, there it was. That familiar doubt. "Yeah," Arav said. The doctor shrugged. "Takes guts." That was it. 2 words. But they stuck. For the first time in a long while, someone didn't tell him to quit. They didn't promise success. They just acknowledged the effort. And that was enough. Weeks turned into months. The grind got uglier. His hands developed cracks from chemicals and cold water. His eyes burned constantly. Sometimes his vision blurred while reading. But something else started happening too. The questions that once confused him started making sense. Concepts connected. Patterns formed. Confidence grew quietly. not loud confidence, the kind that doesn't need validation. The next exam cycle approached. This time, Arav didn't announce it, didn't tell friends, didn't tell relatives. This attempt was personal. If he failed again, the humiliation would be his alone. The night before filling out the exam form, Arav sat with the notebook where he'd written that first question. Why did I fail? He turned the page and wrote a new sentence. I won't fail the same way twice. That was the decision. Not, I will become a doctor. Not, I will prove everyone wrong. Just this, I'm not done yet. And once that decision was made, there was no going back. By the time the next exam came around, Arav wasn't excited. He wasn't nervous either. He was empty, not in a bad way, just drained of expectations. He had learned the hard way that hope could mess with your head. So this time, he walked into the exam hall with one goal and one goal only. Do exactly what you practiced. Nothing more. Nothing less. No dreaming. No pressure. No imagining results. Just execution. The hall looked the same as last time. Same desks. Same silence. Same ticking clock that made seconds feel personal. But Arav wasn't the same guy sitting in that chair. His hands were steady. When the paper started, he didn't rush. He read every question slowly, like it was trying to trick him and he wasn't falling for it anymore. Biology felt solid. Not perfect, but familiar. Chemistry was manageable. Physics still tried to mess with him, but this time, he fought back. He skipped what he didn't know. Came back later. No panic. When time was called, he put his pen down calmly. No dramatic sigh. No silent prayer. He walked out like it was just another shift at the hospital. The waiting period was worse than the exam. Days stretched. Rumors flew. Cutoffs predicted, revised, predicted again. People around him talked nonstop. I heard the cutoff will skyrocket. This year is brutal. Only geniuses will make it. Arav tuned it all out. He worked. He studied lightly. He slept when he could. Results day arrived quietly. No big announcement. Just a list uploaded online. Arav sat in an internet cafe, hands hovering over the keyboard. His heart beat fast, but his face stayed blank. He typed in his roll number. The screen loaded. For a split second, nothing happened. Then it showed. His name. Not at the top. Not anywhere impressive. Near the bottom. Right above the cutoff line. Barely in. Arav stared at the screen. Once. Twice. He refreshed the page. Still there. His name. He didn't scream. Didn't cry. Didn't jump out of the chair. He just leaned back slowly and closed his eyes. His chest tightened. Years of exhaustion, humiliation, rejection, and sacrifice crashed into that one moment. He whispered, I made it. Barely. But barely was enough. The guy next to him noticed and asked, You got in? Arav nodded. Nice, the guy said. Which rank? Arav told him. The guy raised his eyebrows. Damn. Just made it. Arav smiled. Yeah, he said. Just made it. And for the first time in his life, just felt like everything. Telling his parents was harder than passing the exam. He walked home slowly, replaying the moment in his head. When he opened the door, his mom looked up. Well, she asked. Arav handed her the printout. She scanned it once, then again. Her eyes filled with tears. You did it, she said, voice shaking. His dad stood up, took the paper, and stared at it silently for a long time. Then he nodded. No big speech. Just pride. Neighbors found out soon enough. Some congratulated him. Others said, Good for you. A few added, Now the real struggle begins. They weren't wrong. Medical school wasn't some victory lap. It was war. But Arav didn't care. The day he walked into medical college for the first time, he wore his cheapest clothes and his cleanest shoes. The campus felt unreal. Big buildings, confident students, professors who spoke fast and expected you to keep up. He felt small again. But this time, small didn't scare him. Because he had proof now. He belonged here. Even if it was by a thread. Even if he was the lowest ranker in the room. During orientation, a professor said something that stuck. "Look around," he said. "Not all of you will graduate." Some students laughed nervously. Arav didn't. He thought about mopping floors at 2 a.m., about studying under a flickering bulb, about failing and being laughed at. "I didn't come this far to leave halfway," he thought. That night, alone in his hostel room, Arav sat on the bed and stared at the wall. He should have felt like he won. Instead, he felt something heavier. Responsibility. Because getting in was just permission. Now he had to survive. And deep down, he had no idea that the hardest test of his life wasn't an exam anymore. It was about to be a human life. Medical school didn't hit Arav like a challenge. It hit him like a wall. Day one itself made one thing painfully clear. Everyone here was smart. Not studied hard once smart. These were kids who had been topping exams their whole lives. They spoke in medical terms like it was their first language. They asked questions Arav didn't even understand yet. And then there was him, the guy who barely got in, the lowest ranker, the one sitting in the back, writing furiously, trying to keep up while the lecture moved at a speed his brain wasn't used to. He slept 3 hours a night, sometimes less, because medical school didn't pause life. Bills still needed paying. His family still needed help. And Arav still had to work nights at the hospital. So his days looked like this. Classes from morning to evening. A quick meal if he was lucky. Then straight to the hospital for a night shift. Back to the hostel before sunrise. Sleep. Repeat. No weekends. No breaks. His body hated him for it. His hands shook during practicals. His eyes burned constantly. There were days he forgot what day it was. He started surviving on instant coffee and adrenaline. And still he ranked last. First internal assessment results came out. Arav's name sat comfortably at the bottom. Again, students whispered, "That's the guy who barely got in. Probably won't last. Medical school isn't for everyone." He heard it all. He pretended he didn't care. But inside, it crushed him, because he wasn't slacking. He wasn't partying. He wasn't wasting time. He was giving everything he had. And it still wasn't enough. During anatomy practicals, professors moved fast. Identify this nerve. Name that artery. Explain this structure. When Arav hesitated, they didn't yell. They sighed. That sigh hurt more than insults. It said, "You're slowing us down." One professor looked at him once and said, "You need to work harder." Arav wanted to scream. How much harder? He thought, how many hours do I have to give before I'm allowed to be good enough? Some nights, while mopping floors after a 12-hour class day, he'd question everything. I got in, but maybe I don't belong. That thought came back stronger now. Because this time, he didn't just look weak compared to dreamers. He looked weak compared to winners. He stopped talking to people. Not out of arrogance. Out of survival. He sat alone in lectures. Ate alone. Studied alone. Loneliness became normal. One night in the ER, a senior resident noticed him reading anatomy notes during a break. "You're a med student?" the resident asked, surprised. Arav nodded. "And you still work here?" "Yes, sir." The resident studied him for a moment. "That's rough," he said. "But don't burn out." Arav smiled weakly. Burnout sounded like a luxury. He couldn't afford to stop. Weeks turned into months. His rank didn't improve much. Still near the bottom. Still invisible. Still struggling. But something else was happening quietly. He noticed things others didn't. He watched how patients spoke, how nurses moved, how doctors made decisions under pressure. While others studied from books alone, Arav studied reality. He learned how fear sounded in a patient's voice, how silence sometimes meant something was very wrong, how confidence could calm chaos faster than words. One night, he helped hold a patient's hand during a painful procedure. The patient looked at him and said, "Thank you, doctor." Arav almost corrected him, almost said, "I'm not a doctor yet." But he didn't, because in that moment, it didn't matter. For the first time since medical school started, he felt useful. Still, the struggle inside didn't go away. He doubted himself constantly, compared himself constantly, felt behind constantly. But he kept showing up. Tired. Broke. Ranked last. Still showing up. And he didn't know it yet, but all this struggle, every night shift, every low rank, every silent doubt, was sharpening him for a moment where rankings wouldn't matter at all. A moment where instinct, courage, and experience would decide everything. And that moment was coming fast. The night started like every other night. Same fluorescent lights. Same beeping machines. Same smell of disinfectant mixed with fear. Arav clocked in for his shift after a full day of classes, his brain fried, his body running on muscle memory and caffeine. 3 hours of sleep. Maybe less. He tied his apron, washed his hands, and told himself, just get through the night. Around 1:40 a.m., the hospital doors burst open. Not literally, but the energy shifted instantly. Voices got louder. Footsteps got faster. Nurses straightened up. Someone shouted, "Emergency incoming." Arav looked up just as a stretcher came flying in. On it lay a man in his late 50s. Well-dressed. Expensive watch still on his wrist. His face pale, lips slightly blue. Behind him were 2 men in suits, panic written all over them. "This is Mr. Khanna," one of them shouted. "Do something. He just collapsed." That name traveled fast. Everyone knew it. Mr. Khanna wasn't just any patient. He was powerful, wealthy, connected. The kind of guy hospitals treated differently, even if they pretended not to. Arav felt his stomach tighten. Nurses rushed to attach monitors. Vitals popped up on the screen. Heart rate unstable. Blood pressure crashing. "Where's the senior doctor?" someone asked. Silence. A junior resident checked the roster, eyes widening. He stepped out for an emergency consult. He's not answering. Another nurse tried calling. No response. Seconds started feeling loud. Mr. Khanna suddenly jerked on the stretcher, gasping. Then the monitor screamed. Flatline. For half a second, nobody moved. Then chaos exploded. Cardiac arrest. Start CPR. Call anesthesia. Get the crash cart. People moved, but they hesitated. This wasn't a normal patient. This was someone important. Everyone was waiting for someone else to take charge. Arav stood frozen near the wall, mop still in his hand. His heart pounded so hard it hurt. "This isn't your place," his mind screamed. "You're just a student. Just a cleaner. Just the lowest ranker." But his eyes locked onto the monitor. Flat. He remembered anatomy diagrams. Chest compressions. Airway positioning. Ratios. Pressure. Depth. He remembered holding patients in the ER. Watching doctors work. Studying not just books, but moments. A nurse shouted again. "Where the hell is the doctor?" Mr. Khanna's body jolted under weak compressions from a panicking intern. Wrong rhythm. Wrong depth. Arav felt something snap inside him. Not fear. Focus. He dropped the mop. Stepped forward. "Move," he said. The word came out before his brain could stop it. People turned and stared. "What?" the intern said, shocked. Arav didn't raise his voice. Didn't explain. Didn't apologize. "Move," he repeated, firmer. For a split second, no one listened. Then another second passed. And another. The monitor stayed flat. That silence was louder than any authority. The intern stepped aside. Arav placed his hands on the man's chest, right where he'd practiced 1,000 times on mannequins and imagined 1,000,000 more. 30 compressions, he said. Hard and fast. He pushed. The first compression felt unreal. Like crossing a line you can never uncross. His arms burned instantly, but he didn't slow down. 1, 2, 3. A nurse snapped out of it and started counting with him. Another secured the airway. "Bag him," Arav said. "Now." Someone hesitated. "Who are you?" Arav didn't look up. "Doesn't matter," he said. "Do it." And they did. Sweat dripped down his face. His vision tunneled. Everything except the rhythm disappeared. Push. Release. Push. Release. His mind went quiet. No doubt. No fear. No rank. Just action. After 2 cycles, nothing. After 3, the monitor flickered. A tiny blip. "Again," Arav said. He adjusted his hand placement slightly, changed the angle, deeper compressions. His shoulders screamed. Then, the monitor beeped. Once, twice, a weak rhythm returned. Someone shouted, "We've got a pulse." The room froze, then exploded. Vitals stabilized slowly. Oxygen levels climbed. Color returned faintly to the man's face. Right then, the senior doctor ran in, breathless. "What happened?" he demanded. No one answered immediately. They all looked at Arav. The senior doctor followed their eyes and frowned. "Who is this?" Arav stepped back, hands shaking now that the moment was over. "I'm a medical student," he said quietly, "and I work nights here." The doctor stared at the monitor, then at the patient, then back at Arav. "You started CPR?" he asked. Arav nodded. The doctor didn't say anything for a long second. Then he turned to the staff. "Good work," he said. "All of you." But his eyes stayed on Arav. Mr. Khanna was wheeled into ICU alive. Barely. As the chaos settled, Arav leaned against the wall, heart still racing, hands trembling uncontrollably. Reality rushed back in. What did I just do? He was suddenly very aware of who he was. A nobody, a lowest ranker, a student who crossed a line. He didn't know if he'd saved a life or ruined his own. But one thing was undeniable. For the first time, when it mattered most, he didn't freeze. And that changed everything. Saving a pulse doesn't mean saving a life. Arav learned that fast. Mr. Khanna lay in the ICU, unconscious, hooked to machines that were now doing most of the work his body couldn't. The room was quiet in that dangerous way, where everything looks stable until it suddenly isn't. Arav stood outside, replaying every second in his head. Did I push too hard? Was my hand placement right? Did I overstep? No one had yelled at him. No one had praised him either. That scared him more. An hour passed, then another. Then the monitor inside the ICU started screaming again. Nurses rushed in. Doctors followed. Arav's heart dropped as he recognized the sound. Something was wrong. Mr. Khanna's blood pressure plummeted. His oxygen saturation dipped hard. The cardiac rhythm turned erratic. The senior doctor scanned the charts fast. He's crashing again. What's causing it? Someone asked. Possible internal bleed, another resident said. Or massive clot. They needed imaging. Fast. But the CT scanner was down for maintenance. Bad luck at the worst possible time. The room filled with tension. Mr. Khanna's assistants waited outside, pacing like caged animals. One of them snapped. You said he was stable. We're doing everything we can, the senior doctor replied sharply. But Arav noticed something everyone else missed. The patient's breathing pattern. It wasn't just weak. It was asymmetric. Arav's mind started racing. Chest rise uneven. Oxygen dropping. Blood pressure tanking. Could it be a tension pneumothorax? Air trapped in the chest, crushing the lung, pushing against the heart. Deadly if not treated immediately. The fix? Simple in theory. Extremely risky in practice. A needle decompression. A procedure Arav had only practiced on mannequins. Never on a real human. Never on someone this important. He swallowed hard. The senior doctor ordered fluids. Meds. Oxygen turned up. Nothing helped. Seconds felt heavy again. Arav's heart pounded so loud he thought others could hear it. If he was wrong, he could kill the man. If he stayed silent, the man could die anyway. His hands shook. His mouth went dry. Saving a pulse doesn't mean saving a life. Arav learned that fast. Mr. Khanna lay in the ICU, unconscious, hooked to machines that were now doing most of the work his body couldn't. The room was quiet in that dangerous way, where everything looks stable until it suddenly isn't. Arav stood outside, replaying every second in his head. Did I push too hard? Was my hand placement right? Did I overstep? No one had yelled at him. No one had praised him either. That scared him more. An hour passed, then another. Then the monitor inside the ICU started screaming again. Nurses rushed in. Doctors followed. Arav's heart dropped as he recognized the sound. Something was wrong. Mr. Khanna's blood pressure plummeted. His oxygen saturation dipped hard. The cardiac rhythm turned erratic. The senior doctor scanned the charts fast. He's crashing again. What's causing it? Someone asked. Possible internal bleed, another resident said. Or massive clot. They needed imaging. Fast. But the CT scanner was down for maintenance. Bad luck at the worst possible time. The room filled with tension. Mr. Khanna's assistants waited outside, pacing like caged animals. One of them snapped. You said he was stable. We're doing everything we can, the senior doctor replied sharply. But Arav noticed something everyone else missed. The patient's breathing pattern. It wasn't just weak. It was asymmetric. Arav's mind started racing. Chest rise uneven. Oxygen dropping. Blood pressure tanking. Could it be a tension pneumothorax? Air trapped in the chest, crushing the lung, pushing against the heart. Deadly if not treated immediately. The fix? Simple in theory. Extremely risky in practice. A needle decompression. A procedure Arav had only practiced on mannequins. Never on a real human. Never on someone this important. He swallowed hard. The senior doctor ordered fluids. Meds. Oxygen turned up. Nothing helped. Seconds felt heavy again. Arav's heart pounded so loud he thought others could hear it. If he was wrong, he could kill the man. If he stayed silent, the man could die anyway. His hands shook. His mouth went dry. Arav didn't find out the truth right away. At first, Mr. Khanna was just a name on a chart. A powerful man. A critical patient. Another life hanging between machines and timing. That's it. But names have weight. And some names carry history. It was the second evening after the emergency. Arav was finishing rounds, running on fumes, when a nurse handed him a file. ICU follow-up, she said. Doctor wants you there. Arav nodded and walked down the corridor. The same corridor he'd cleaned 100 times before he ever wore scrubs. The ICU doors slid open with a soft hiss. Mr. Khanna was awake now. Not strong. Not fully there. But conscious. His eyes followed movement slowly. His breathing was steady. Monitors hummed instead of screamed. The danger had passed. The senior doctor spoke briefly, explaining the recovery plan, then stepped aside. Someone here you should meet, he said. Arav stepped forward. Mr. Khanna looked at him. Really looked at him. Not like a patient looks at staff. Not like a powerful man looks at help. But like someone trying to remember where they've seen a face before. His brow furrowed. His eyes narrowed slightly. You, he said slowly. Arav felt a strange tightening in his chest. Yes, sir. Mr. Khanna stared longer now. Then it hit him. The memory. A small office. A glass desk. A file flipped shut too quickly. A younger version of Arav sitting stiffly in a plastic chair. Students like you rarely make it. The color drained from Mr. Khanna's face. I know you, he whispered. The room went quiet. Arav didn't move. Didn't speak. Mr. Khanna swallowed hard. You came to my institute. Years ago. Arav nodded once. I told you, Mr. Khanna's voice cracked. I told you you'd never be a doctor. The words hung in the air. Heavy. Sharp. Unavoidable. The nurse froze. The junior doctor looked between them, confused. The senior doctor's eyes narrowed slightly, sensing something deeper. Arav felt everything rush back in one brutal wave. The humiliation. The polite rejection. The way that sentence followed him for years like a curse. You'll never be a doctor. He exhaled slowly. Yes, sir, Arav said. You did. Silence. Mr. Khanna's hands trembled slightly on the bedsheet. His voice dropped. And last night, he said, they told me you're the one who saved my life. Arav didn't smile. Didn't nod proudly. He just stood there. I did what was needed, he said. Anyone trained would have done the same. Mr. Khanna shook his head weakly. No, they wouldn't have. They hesitated. He looked down, shame creeping into his expression. I told so many kids no, he continued. I decided who was worth it and who wasn't, based on scores, backgrounds, comfort. His eyes filled. And when I was dying, he whispered, The one who stepped forward was the kid I dismissed. The room felt smaller. The senior doctor cleared his throat softly, but Arav raised a hand, stopping him. "It's okay," Arav said. That surprised everyone, even himself. "I don't hate you," he continued. "And I didn't save you to prove you wrong." Mr. Khanna looked up, eyes red. "Then why?" Arav thought for a second. "Because in that moment," he said, "you weren't a powerful man. You weren't a counselor. You weren't someone who rejected me. You were just a patient. And I was just someone who didn't quit." Mr. Khanna closed his eyes. A tear slid down the side of his face. "I was wrong," he said quietly. "About you. About a lot of things." Arav nodded. "I know. That was it. No revenge speech. No dramatic win. No moment of superiority. Just truth meeting consequence." Later that night, Arav walked out of the ICU alone. The hospital felt different now. Not louder. Not brighter. Just honest. For years, people had told him who he wasn't. Not smart enough. Not rich enough. Not built for this. And he believed them longer than he should have. But life had a funny way of flipping scripts. The man who once decided Arav's future with a sentence had nearly lost his own. Until the same kid he dismissed stood up when it mattered most. Not because he was the best, but because he stayed. A week later, Arav received an email. A scholarship. Full support. No conditions. It was from Mr. Khanna. Arav read it once, then closed it, then reopened it. He didn't feel victory. He felt peace. Because the real twist wasn't that he saved the man who rejected him. The real twist was this. He no longer needed approval from anyone who once doubted him. He had already crossed the line that mattered. From dreaming to doing. And from that day on, whenever someone told Arav, "You'll never be a doctor," he didn't argue. He didn't explain. He just smiled. Because some truths don't need defending. They show up when it counts.